The twin suns of Zerathia shone brightly over the crystal towers of the royal city. The skies were clear, and the wind carried the sweet scent of silverbloom flowers from the royal gardens. Princess Lysera stood on her balcony, looking out over the shining capital. She loved her world, its beauty, its peace, and its gentle people. But she had no idea that this peaceful morning would change her life forever. A knock came at her chamber door. "Enter," Lysera called. The tall, armored figure of Captain Sereth, her father's chief guard, stepped inside and bowed deeply. "Your Highness, His Majesty requests your presence in the Royal Council Hall." "At once." Lysera frowned. Council Hall was usually for matters of state, not personal family talks. "Is it about the trade dispute with the eastern colonies?" she asked. "I do not know, Princess," Sereth said, his voice steady. "But the king said it is important." Curious and slightly uneasy, Lysera followed him through the shining corridors. The palace walls were decorated with ancient Zerathian murals, scenes of peace treaties, great festivals, and heroic victories. But Lysera's mind was elsewhere. Her father rarely called her in such a formal way. When they reached the council hall, the huge crystal doors opened silently. Inside, King Zorath sat at the great table, his silver crown resting lightly on his head. His face was calm, but Lysera noticed a seriousness in his deep golden eyes. "Come closer, my daughter," he said. Lysera stepped forward. "Father, you sent for me?" The king nodded and gestured for her to sit beside him. "There is something we must speak about, something that concerns the safety of our world." Lysera's heart skipped a beat. "Is Zerathia in danger?" she asked. "In a way, yes," Zorath said. "You know of the Galactic Dominion, the war empire that has already conquered many worlds?" "Yes," Lysera replied. "Our scholars say they are growing stronger every year, but our defenses are strong, and we have peace treaties with our neighbors." The king's voice lowered. "Peace is not enough, my daughter. The Dominion will come for us eventually. When they do, we must not stand alone. That is why I have arranged an alliance." Lysera tilted her head. "With which world?" Zorath paused for a moment, as if measuring his words. "With Earth, with the humans." Lysera blinked in surprise. She had heard of humans fierce, determined, and unpredictable. Traders and travelers told many stories about them, some admirable, others frightening. "I see," she said slowly. "And how will this alliance be made?" The king took a deep breath. "Through marriage, a bond between our royal family and one of Earth's most respected warriors." Lysera felt her chest tighten. "Marriage, father? You don't mean—" "I mean you, Lysera," Lysera said gently, but firmly. "You will be joined to Captain Cale Draven." The words hit her like a thunderstrike. She stood from her chair. "No way, Dad. It's not that human," she blurted, forgetting royal manners in her shock. The king's eyes softened, but his tone remained calm. "I know you have heard stories about him. Cale Draven is a warrior, yes. He has fought in many battles. Some call him ruthless, some—" Lysera's voice rose. "Everyone calls him ruthless. They say he leaves no enemy standing. They say even his own allies fear him. You want me to marry that man?" Zorath's gaze held hers firmly. "I want you to understand that Cale Draven is more than the stories say. I have spoken with the Human Council myself. He is their most trusted protector. He has defended their colonies against invaders and pirates. He has saved thousands of lives." Lysera shook her head, pacing the floor. "But marriage? Father, you are asking me to tie my life to a stranger, a dangerous stranger." "This is not about love, Lysera," Zorath said, his voice deepening. "It is about survival. An alliance with Earth will make our enemies think twice before attacking. Together, humans and Zerathians can stand against the Dominion. Alone, we will fall." Lysera stopped pacing, her eyes filled with frustration. "You always taught me that marriage is a bond of trust and respect. How can there be trust when all I feel is fear?" Her father stood, walking toward her.
"Oh."
"Fear him because you do not know him. You see only the shadow his reputation casts. But I believe there is more to Cale Draven than the galaxy knows." She crossed her arms. And if you are wrong, what if he truly is the cold, merciless human they say he is? Then you will have to see for yourself, Zorith said. I have arranged for you to meet him in person on the Aurora's Gate station in 1 week. Lysara's mouth opened in protest, but the king raised his hand. I am not forcing your heart, my daughter, but I am asking for your duty. Meet him, speak with him, see the man behind the title. If after that you truly believe you cannot accept this, I will hear you. She hesitated, her mind torn between loyalty to her people and her own dread. I will meet him, she said at last, but only because I want to look into his eyes and know the truth. The king nodded with a faint smile. That is all I ask. Later that night, Lysara sat in her private garden under the twin moons. The cool breeze carried the scent of the night-blooming flowers, but her thoughts were far away. She imagined what Captain Kale Draven might look like. Tall, strong, scarred from battle. Would his eyes be cold as stone, or could there be kindness? Hidden somewhere within, she didn't know. And that uncertainty frightened her even more than the rumors. The next few days were restless. Lysara tried to focus on her usual duties overseeing art festivals, meeting visiting scholars and inspecting new city projects, but her mind kept returning to the same question. What kind of man would she meet? Servants whispered behind her back. News of the Royal Alliance had already begun to spread, and many had their own opinions. Some said it was a wise move to join with humans. Others feared it would bring trouble. One evening, her closest friend Tyrion visited her chambers. I heard about the marriage, Tyrion said carefully. How do you feel? Lysara sighed. Like my life is no longer my own. Like I am walking toward a door I cannot see through. Tyrion touched her hand gently. Maybe the door will lead somewhere brighter than you think. Sometimes people are not what they seem. Lysara gave a weak smile. Or maybe the door hides a monster. Tyrion laughed softly. Then at least you'll have a good story to tell. When the 7th day came, a royal shuttle awaited Lysara at the palace's skyport. The silver vessel gleamed under the morning light. Her father met her there, dressed in formal robes. Remember, Zorith said quietly, you go not only as my daughter, but as a voice for our people. Be wise. Be open. Lysara nodded, though her heart felt heavy. I will do my duty. The shuttle lifted into the skies, leaving the sparkling city far below. Sarah sat by the viewing window, watching the stars grow brighter as the shuttle left the planet's atmosphere. Soon, the great ring of Aurora's Gate station came into view, a vast structure of steel and light, orbiting quietly among the stars. Somewhere on that station, the man called Kale Draven was waiting, and Lysara was about to meet him. The royal shuttle slowed as it approached the shining gates of Aurora's Gate station. The massive structure floated silently in the black sea of space, its outer ring turning slowly to keep artificial gravity inside. Silver docking arms stretched outward like the fingers of a giant, cueing incoming ships into their berths. Princess Lysara sat by the shuttle's window, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had been to space stations before, but never with her heart beating this fast. Somewhere inside that huge station, the man called Captain Kale Draven was waiting. The pilot's calm voice came over the intercom. Princess, we are about to dock. Lysara nodded without speaking. She felt her stomach tighten. She wished she could have had more time to prepare, or perhaps more time to think of an excuse to avoid this meeting. But the moment had come. The shuttle glided smoothly into its docking bay. Guards in Zorathian silver armor stepped forward, greeting her with formal bows. Beside them stood human officers from Earth, wearing dark blue uniforms with golden trim. The two groups seemed stiff with formality, each side careful to show respect. Her escort, Captain Sarith, leaned closer to her. "We'll be waiting in the central reception hall." "Princess," he said, "shall we go?" Sarah took a deep breath and nodded. Said, "Yes, let's get this over with." They walked through the docking corridors, long, well-lit halls with clear panels showing the stars outside. Human and alien travelers moved past them, some stopping to bow or give polite nods. Lysara tried to keep her face calm, but inside, she was uneasy. Every step brought her closer to the human warrior she had imagined for days. Finally, the tall doors of the central reception hall slid open. The chamber was wide and bright, its ceiling arched high above. Flags of many worlds hung from the walls, including the deep blue banner of Earth and the silver emblem of Zarathia, and there he was. Cale Draven. He stood near the center of the hall, speaking briefly to a human officer before turning toward her. Lysera stopped in place for a heartbeat, taking in his appearance. He was tall, taller than most humans she had seen. With broad shoulders and a frame that carried the weight of battle, his hair was dark, cut short, and a faint scar ran across his right cheek. His eyes, a piercing gray, studied her with quiet intensity. His dark uniform was simple, but carried the marks of high rank. Lysera had expected a cold, threatening glare. But instead, Cale's gaze was steady, controlled, like a soldier measuring a battlefield. He stepped forward. "Princess Lysera of Zarathia?" he said, his voice deep and calm. "It is an honor to meet you." She inclined her head politely, keeping her tone cool. "Captain Draven." I wish I could say the same, but we've only just met." A faint flicker of something amusement perhaps passed across his face. "Fair enough," he said. "Imagine you did not choose this meeting." "No," she replied honestly. "I did not." For a moment they simply looked at each other. Lysera had thought he would be arrogant or overly proud, but his manner was surprisingly reserved. Still, she kept her guard up. Cale gestured toward a quieter seating area. "Shall we talk?" They sat across from each other. A serving droid brought 2 glasses of Zarathian blossom tea, a gesture from the station's diplomatic hosts. Lysera sipped slowly, studying him. "So," she began, "you are the great human warrior my father speaks of. The one they call ruthless." Cale didn't flinch. "I've heard the word before," he said evenly. "It usually comes from my enemies. Sometimes from people who don't understand war. And should I understand it?" She asked that. "Depends," he replied. "Do you want the truth or the stories?" She set her cup down. "Tell me the truth." Cale leaned back slightly. "I have fought many battles. Some were clean victories, some were costly. In war, mercy can save lives, but sometimes mercy can also destroy them. I do what must be done to protect those under my command. It isn't pretty, and it doesn't make good stories for the history books, but it keeps my people alive." Lysera studied his face. He didn't speak like a man bragging about power. He spoke like someone carrying a weight no one else wanted. "In this marriage?" she asked. "Do you want it?" Cale's eyes narrowed. "Slightly. I want peace. If this alliance helps keep our world safe, then I will honor it. But no, I am not here to force myself into your life." That answer caught her off guard. She had expected him to talk about duty or demand respect. Instead, his words were plain and almost considerate. Still, she wasn't ready to lower her guard. "You speak calmly now, but I wonder, when you are in battle, do you change? Do you become the monster people fear?" Cale's expression didn't change, but his eyes softened just a little. "In battle, I am a soldier. I fight so others don't have to. If that makes me a monster in some eyes, I can live with that." Conversation was interrupted when a young alien child, a small, green-skinned merchant's daughter, stumbled into the hall. She'd been chasing a small toy sphere that rolled toward them. Before Lysera could move, Cale stood, bent down, and gently handed the toy back to the child. "There you go," he said softly. The child grinned and ran off without fear. Lysera blinked. It was such a small gesture, but it didn't fit the image of a heartless warrior she had carried in her mind. "You surprise me, Captain?" she said. He gave a small shrug. "War is not all I am." Their meeting continued for another hour. They spoke about their worlds, their peoples, and the growing danger of the galactic dominion. Cale's knowledge of strategy impressed her. He clearly understood the threat better than most. When it was time for her to leave, Cale stood. "Princess, I know you have doubts about me," he said. "I won't try to erase them with words. Judge me by what I do, not by what you've heard." Lysera looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Very well, I will watch, and I will decide." They parted with a simple nod. But as Lysera walked back toward the docking bay, she found herself thinking not only about the fear she still carried, but also about the small moment when he had helped the child. Perhaps the man behind the stories was not as simple as she thought. The shuttle carried Princess Lysera back to Zarathia, but her thoughts did not stay in the skies. They remained in the reception hall of Aurora's Gate, where she had met the human warrior Kael Draven for the first time. She had expected a cold, arrogant soldier. Instead, she found someone calm, guarded, and unexpectedly respectful. But that did not erase her fear. Rumors did not appear from nowhere. Somewhere in Kael's past, something had earned him the name Ruthless. She needed to know if those rumors were truth or lies. For the next several days, Lysera could not stop thinking about their conversation. His words had been simple but carried weight. Judge me by what I do, not by what you've heard. That was exactly what she planned to do. Lysera began her quiet investigation. She did not tell her father she knew he would insist she trust Kael without question. Instead, she called upon her network of friends, scholars, and travelers. Her first meeting was with Master Rylan. It's an elderly historian who had studied human military campaigns for decades. He welcomed her into his study, a room filled with books, data scrolls, and glowing star maps. I need to know about Captain Kael Draven, Lysera said after they sat down. Not the stories told in public, the truth.
Oh.
Rylan adjusted his spectacles and tapped a few keys on his datapad. Kael Draven, born on the colony world Ardent Prime, joined the Earth Defense Forces at 17, rose through the ranks quickly.
Oh.
Known for leading difficult missions that others refused to take. Yes, I've heard all that, Lysera said. But why? Do so many call him ruthless? Rylan's brow furrowed. Because in his most famous battle, the Siege of Habs's Reach, he made a choice that saved an entire colony, but at a heavy cost. What choice? Rylan leaned forward. The enemy had captured a group of civilians and was using them as a shield. If Kael hesitated, the enemy would have overrun the colony completely. He attacked anyway. Many lives were lost, but the colony was saved. Those who survived saw him as a hero. Those who lost family called him a monster. Lysera sat back in silence. She understood now his reputation came from impossible decisions. Her next step was speaking to those who had served under him. She arranged a discreet meeting with Lieutenant Mara Ven, a human officer stationed on a trade vessel currently visiting Zarathia. Mara was tall, with sun-weathered skin and sharp, observant eyes. She bowed politely when she met the princess in a quiet cafe by the spaceport. You served under Kael Draven, didn't you? Lysera asked. Yes, for 3 years, Mara replied. Why do you ask? I need to understand the kind of man he is. Mara's lips curved into a faint smile. Then I'll tell you. Captain Draven is the kind of man who will walk the battlefield last, making sure no one is left behind. The kind of man who will carry a wounded soldier on his back for hours if he has to. But he's also the kind who will not hesitate when the only way to save 1,000 lives is to take 100. Lysera nodded slowly. So both the hero and the feared warrior are real? Both, Mara said firmly. One cannot exist without the other. That's what makes him hard for some people to understand. Lysera began to see a pattern. Story, whether told by a historian, a soldier, or a traitor, painted the same picture. Kael was not cruel for the sake of cruelty. He was a man who carried the burden of making choices no one else dared to make. But knowing this did not make her decision any easier. One evening, Lysera walked through the royal gardens, lost in thought. The moonlight shimmered on the silver bloom flowers, and the soft hum of night insects filled the air. Her friend Tyren joined her. You've been quiet these days, Tyren said. Still thinking about the human warrior? Lysera smiled. Faintly, yes. I've learned more about him. Some of it explains why he's feared, but there is something else. What? I don't think he enjoys what he does, Lysera said. I think he sees it as his duty, nothing more. He doesn't seem like the kind of man who wants power or glory. Then maybe, Tyron suggested, you should see how he acts when he's not on a battlefield. That will tell you more than stories ever could. Lysera considered that. Yes, she had heard enough from others. It was time to watch Kale with her own eyes. Fate gave her the chance sooner than expected. A week later, Lysera traveled to Aurora's gate again for a diplomatic meeting with human envoys. She knew Kale would be there, representing Earth's military. She told herself she was going for official reasons. But in truth, she wanted to observe him when he didn't know she was watching. From a distance, she saw him speaking with station engineers about security protocols. His tone was calm but firm, his posture relaxed, yet alert. When a young human technician dropped a heavy tool and looked embarrassed, Kale crouched down, picked it up, and offered it back with a quiet word of encouragement. Later, during the formal talks, Kale remained silent most of the time, letting the diplomat speak. But when a heated argument broke out over defense strategies, he spoke up with clear, logical reasoning that settled the debate in minutes. Lysera realized something important. Kale commanded respect not by shouting, but by showing he was worth listening to. That evening, as she prepared to return to Zarathia, an alarm suddenly echoed through the station. A mechanical voice announced, "Warning! Pirate vessels detected approaching outer ring sectors. All personnel prepare for security lockdown." Chaos stirred in the docking bays as merchants rushed to secure their ships. Lysera felt a surge of fear. She had never been caught in a space raid before. Her guards moved to shield her, but in the distance she saw Kale moving fast toward the threat. Without hesitation, he barked orders to the human security team and positioned soldiers at key corridors. Lysera noticed that even in this moment of danger, he guided panicked civilians to safe areas. Before taking up his own defensive post, when the pirates attempted to breach one of the docking gates, Kale's squad repelled them quickly and without unnecessary bloodshed. The entire engagement lasted only minutes, but it showed her more about Kale than any story could. After the all-clear was given, Lysera found herself walking toward him. He was checking on an injured officer, helping him to a med unit. When Kale saw her, he simply said, "You're safe. That's what matters." In that moment, Lysera felt a small but undeniable shift in her heart. She still feared the man he could be in battle. But she also saw the man who placed others' safety above all else. That night, as she looked out from her guest quarters at the endless stars beyond the station, she whispered to herself, "Perhaps I was wrong about you, Captain Draven. Perhaps." But the final decision was still far away. She needed to see more, and soon she would, in ways she never expected. The days after the pirate incident passed quietly for Princess Lysera, but her mind was no longer calm. She could not stop thinking about Captain Kale Draven, the way he had acted without hesitation to protect strangers, the way he had placed himself in danger without a second thought. Perhaps her father had been right. Perhaps there was more to this man than the stories told. But before she could decide how she truly felt about him, the galaxy decided for her. It began with a soft chime. In the royal palace on Zarathia, an urgent call from the Planetary Defense Network. Lysera was in the council chamber with her father when a holographic image of the defense commander appeared. His voice was tense. "Your Majesty, our long-range scanners have detected multiple incoming warships. Their configuration matches the Galactic Dominion fleet." The room fell silent. The Dominion. The name alone was enough to bring fear to any world. They were ruthless conquerors, consuming entire planets and forcing their people into servitude. King Zoroth rose to his feet. "How long until they reach our atmosphere?" "Less than 1 hour, sire." Lysera's heart began to pound. We can't stop them alone," she whispered. Her father nodded grimly. "I know. Send a priority call to the Earth Defense Command. Request immediate aid. Tell them to contact Captain Kale Draven directly." Within minutes, the palace received a reply. The human fleet was already mobilizing, and leading them, as her father had ordered, was Kale himself. The skies of Zarathia darkened as the Dominion fleet entered orbit. Their massive ships blotted out the sunlight, casting long shadows over the cities below. The people panicked. Sirens wailed, Emergency shelters opened. Soldiers rushed to their posts. Lysera stood on a palace balcony, watching as the first wave of enemy fighters descended like a swarm of black insects. She heard a distant rumble as the first blasts struck the outer defenses. The force shook the very air. Moments later, her communicator buzzed. Princess Lysera Kale's voice came through, calm and focused. Stay inside the palace. The Dominion's first target will be your capital. I'm bringing my fleet in to intercept. Kale, she started, but the line went dead. He was already moving high above the planet. Kale's fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Sleek human warships took position alongside Zarathia's own defense cruisers. Through precise commands, Kale coordinated both fleets into a single, united line. His voice carried over the shared comm channel. All ships, listen up. Hold formation, protect the city shields at all costs. If they fall, the planet falls. The battle began in a blaze of light. Human and Zarathian ships weaved between enemy fire, answering with their own bursts of plasma and rail cannon strikes. Kale's flagship, the Iron Resolve, pushed straight into the thick of the fight, drawing the Dominion's attention away from the weaker vessels. On the ground, Lysera moved through the palace corridors, ignoring the advice to hide. She wanted to help in any way she could, relaying orders, calming frightened citizens, coordinating medical teams. But the fight in orbit was brutal. Despite their best efforts, several Dominion dropships broke through the blockade and landed near the city. Within minutes, the streets turned into a war zone. Dominion soldiers in dark armor advanced toward the palace, their heavy rifles cutting down any resistance. Lysera was in the grand hall when the palace guards rushed in. "There, coming this way?" one shouted. Before she could even respond, the great doors burst open with a deafening crash. Enemy soldiers poured in. Lysera froze, and then she saw him, Kale Draven. He stormed into the hall from the opposite entrance, leading a small strike team of human and Zarathian soldiers. His rifle barked sharp bursts, each shot precise. His presence filled the room like a storm. "Get her out of here," he ordered. But Lysera couldn't move. Not because of fear, but because of the sight before her. This was not the cold, silent man she had met in a reception hall. This was a warrior in his element, every movement driven by determination, not cruelty. Kale's team pushed the enemy back, forcing them to retreat through the shattered doors. Smoke filled the hall, the scent of burning stone and metal hanging. In the air, "Are you hurt?" Kale asked, his voice quick but steady. "I'm fine," Lysera said. "But the city still holding?" he interrupted. "We're pushing them back, but it's going to take everything we've got." Even as he spoke, a fresh wave of explosions rocked the palace. Hours passed in a blur of battle. Kale moved constantly, one moment in the command post, the next in the streets, rallying soldiers who were close to breaking. He fought not just with weapons, but with words that gave hope. At one point, Lysera saw him stand alone against a squad of Dominion troopers to protect a group of fleeing civilians. He fought with brutal efficiency, but when the last enemy fell, he immediately checked on the civilians, guiding them to safety. This was not the work of a heartless man. By nightfall, the combined human and Zarathian forces began to push the Dominion back toward their landing sites. Kale took a deep cut across his shoulder during a street skirmish, but he barely seemed to notice. Lysera rushed to him when she saw the blood. "You're injured," she said. He shook his head. "Nothing serious. There are worse wounds out there that need attention." But she wouldn't let it go. She tore a strip from her ceremonial sash and bound the wound herself. Kale looked at her with something, almost like surprise, as if he hadn't expected her to care. At last, just before dawn, the Dominion forces broke off their attack and retreated to their ships. The battered Zarathian city stood, its people shaken but alive. The cost had been heavy, but they had survived together. In the aftermath, Lysera found Kale in the palace courtyard, speaking quietly with her father. His uniform was torn, his armor scorched, but his posture was still strong. When he noticed her, he stepped toward her. "It's over, for now," he he said. She met his gaze. You saved us. All of us. He shook his head. We saved each other. If Zarathia had fallen, the humans would have lost a friend and an ally. That's not something I'm willing to let happen. Lysera studied him for a long moment. She thought of all the things she had been told about him, the fearsome warrior, the merciless fighter. The man standing before her now was more than that. Much more, that night, as the wounded were tended and the fires put out. Lysera stood on the same palace balcony where she had first learned of the marriage alliance. She looked toward the stars, where Kale's fleet still patrolled in case the Dominion returned. She realized something deep inside her had changed. For the first time, the thought of marrying Kale Draven did not fill her with fear. It filled her with a strange, cautious hope. The battle was over. The smoke had cleared from the skies of Zarathia, and the streets of the royal capital were slowly coming back to life. Merchants reopened their shops. Children peeked out from doorways. Families reunited in tearful embraces. But for Princess Lysera, the war had left more than just the scars on the city walls. It had left a question in her heart. The question her father had asked weeks ago. The choice she had refused to make. That evening, Lysera walked alone in the royal gardens. The silver bloom flowers swayed gently in the cool night breeze, their petals glowing faintly under the twin moons. She could hear the distant hum of repair drones fixing the palace towers. She thought about Kale Draven, the man she had feared, the man she had doubted, the man who had fought side by side with her people when their world was moments away from falling. She thought about how he had stood between her and danger without hesitation. She thought about the way he had led, not through fear, but through courage. Her father found her there. King Zoroth stood beside her in silence for a while before speaking. You've been quiet these past 2 days, my daughter. Lysera nodded. There's much to think about. He studied her face. And your thoughts about Captain Draven? She turned to him, her eyes steady. When you first told me about the alliance, I thought you were asking me to chain myself to a stranger, to a man whose name brought only fear. But I have seen him now, father. I have seen him fight not for glory, but for others. I have seen him risk his life for people he barely knows, and I have seen that his strength is not only in his weapons, but in his heart. The king's expression softened. Then you have your answer. Lysera hesitated. But I want to tell him. Myself. The next morning, she found Kale in the palace courtyard. He was speaking with human officers, preparing to return to his fleet. His uniform was repaired, but the faint bandage on his shoulder was a reminder of the price he had paid in the battle. When he saw her, he dismissed his officers with a nod and stepped toward her. Princess, he said, I was just about to leave. The humans will remain in orbit for a few more days in case the Dominion tries again, but my place is with my crew. Lysera took a deep breath. Before you go, I need to speak with you. Alone. He nodded, and they walked together to the quiet overlook above the city. From here, the rebuilt skyline stretched far into the horizon, its crystal towers shining in the daylight. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lysera turned to him. When I first heard your name, I thought of a ruthless warrior who crushed anything. In his path, I told my father I would never marry such a man. I was certain you were cold, unfeeling, dangerous. Kale's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. And he still think the same. I'm used to it, but I was wrong, she continued. I have seen what you truly are. Yes, you are a warrior. Yes, you can be fierce. But you are also a protector, a leader, and a man who does what is right, even when it is not easy. Kale was silent for a moment, his gray eyes watching her carefully. I told you before, Princess, I will not force this alliance on you. If you do not wish it, I will leave today, and there will be no ill will between us. Lysera shook her head. I am not agreeing because of duty anymore. I am agreeing because I choose to, because I believe you are someone I can stand beside, not just in politics, but in life. For the first time since she had met him, Kale's calm mask shifted. His eyes softened, and a faint warmth touched his expression. Then, Princess Lysera, you honor me more than you know. They stood in quiet understanding, the sunlight reflecting off the palace spires around them. The news of the decision spread. Quickly, in the royal capital, bells rang in celebration. People of Zarathia gathered in the Grand Plaza, cheering for the new bond between their world and Earth, on the human ships in orbit. The crew raised their voices in approval. The formal ceremony was planned for the following week. It would not be a traditional wedding of love's beginning, but of trust. Trust that had been forged in battle and proven in fire. On the day of the alliance ceremony, the plaza was filled with both Zarathians and humans. Silver and blue fluttered in the warm breeze. The sound of music from both cultures blended together, creating a harmony that had never been heard before. Lysera stood beside Kale before the Grand Council. She wore the flowing silver gown of her people, while he wore his formal navy blue earth uniform, his medals shining in the sun. The council speaker stepped forward. Today, we witness the joining of two worlds, not through conquest, but through unity. Not through fear, but through hope. Lysera glanced at Kale. His face was as calm as always, but she noticed the faintest hint of a smile at the corner of his lips. When it was time to speak their vows, Lysera stepped forward. I pledge to stand beside you, not because my father commands it, but because I have seen your heart. I will honor our alliance and face the challenges ahead together. Kale followed. I pledge to defend this world as my own. I will fight for its people, protect its peace, and honor the trust you have given me. When the ceremony ended, the crowd erupted in applause. Humans and Zarathians cheered side by side. For the first time, Lysera truly believed their two worlds could be one family later. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Kale and Lysera stood together on the palace balcony. The stars began to appear, and far above, the human fleet glimmered like a line of watchful guardians. You know, Kale said quietly, I think you were right to doubt me at first. Lysera looked at him, surprised. Why? Because trust should be earned, he replied. And I am glad I had the chance to earn yours. She smiled softly. You did more than that, Kale. You changed it, as the night fell over Zarathia. The two stood side by side, not as strangers bound by politics, but as partners, ready to face whatever the galaxy would bring next. And somewhere deep in her heart, Lysera knew she had chosen well.